Good morning, good evening, hello everybody. Daily video review is here. So the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe in our studio. So I've been testing the games for almost 16 years and playing them more than 25. I never experienced anything like the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. The content is all about the story of a man named Stanley, obviously, again because it actually was already told in 2013 with the Stanley Parable for the PC, or not. So our author, David Render, and German indie studio Crows have created new content for the long overdue and repeatedly postponed consoles with the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. Our test reveals whenever the game is as exciting today as it was whenever the new features have worth time for those who know the original. History of the stories. The telling of imaginary stories is one of the oldest forms of communication known to mankind. The stories are not just told with the intervention of film. The printing press, after all, fiction's elements have probably always crept into the accounts of man's experiences when they returned from home a hunt. It has been played for a very long time. Historians date the first board game called Senate around 3200 before the Christ. In the comparatively young medium of the video games, the development of storytelling has no longer depended on what is technically feasible in terms of perceivability and storage space. Although both aspects no longer play a role, video game stories are often still at the best on the level of mediocre films. This may be due to the fact that story usually plays second fiddle to the intercreativity, or to recall the well-known quote from the ID founder John Carmack, the story in video games is like the story in the porn movies. You expect there to be one, but it doesn't matter. The other way around, where the focus is on the story, the playfulness suffers, such as adventures from the David Cage Studios' Quantic Dream, Detroit Become Human, Heavy Rain, and etc., little more than interactive films in which the player makes decisions about the further course of the story. This is exactly where the David Brennan started in 2011 and developed a mold with a source engine which blossomed into an independent game 2 years later and finally appeared for the common consoles and the PC 9 years later. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe tells the story of the office worker Stanley, whose only job is to press the keys on the computer screen in his office number 427. When Stanley realizes that he is alone in the building, he goes in search of colleagues. How does he notice? An off-screen narrator tells us just the way it is. Being the well-conditioned subordinators that the video game offers are press X to show respect. We obey the charismatic voice and follow the narrator's words in the first-person perspective through the seemingly deserted office complex. After just a few minutes, we reach the end of the game with Stanley. Sounds boring? Yes, it is. It's precisely this obedience that leads to the trailer and official most positive ending of the game. However, the Stanley Parable only comes interesting when we leave old habits behind. As we explore, we soon come to a room with the two doors. The narrator let us know that the Stanley goes through the left one. But what may happen if we disobey, deviate from the prescribed path, and boldly step through the right gate? After all, we are dealing with a video game. We can do whatever we want, and yet we are free to choose, or not. Instead of continuing to bore you with directions, let be the point. The Stanley Parable draws its main attraction from our and thus from Stanley unruliness, because whenever we don't do what the objective voice dictates, the walking simulator becomes really interesting and above all, hilarious. Visibly irritated, the narrator complains about Stanley's attempt to sabotage his story. If you like to reflect on your actions and do cerebral philosophical consideration in video games instead of just a reflexive shooting, you should have a lot of fun with the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. Thank you for watching, don't forget to comment and subscribe. Thank you. Блять. To this point, the Stanley Parable is already a shrewd reflection on the agency of video games. From... Блять, старый, sorry, я сейчас зачитаю conclusion и все. So, conclusion. I'm just as critical of humor in games as their own stories, which are often copied from the film and literature. Both really work really Well, from me, because they often contrast to the interactive nature of the games. Two aspects made this game special. First, it's self-aware of artistically as video game and works with Atmos Metal Gear Solid 2 achievements something similar. Aesthetics and humor often remind me of two Portals puzzles. Second, the Stanley Parable and especially the Ultra Deluxe version invite interpretation. What author David Brandon actually wanted to say in his narrative experiment can only be guessed at. Is it about freedom of choice? Which is not, cannot be, since the game's aim is also to subvert the interpretations of the narrator. The game should appear to literary theorists who pondered the role of the author and his relationship to his creation. The death of the author concept describes in the fact that the work eludes its creator's sovereignty of the interpretation as soon as it's made accessible to the public. The Stanley Parable is a narrative milestone that works solely as an interactive video game, terribly advancing to the medium. Thank you for watching, don't forget to comment and subscribe. Peace.